Hello, everybody. It's 1 o'clock here on IC Radio. My name is Lizzy.
And my name is Sydney. Welcome back to Science at 1, where we bring you the best science news, gossip, and analysis.
And the best music on our fun playlist today. We're going to be doing things a little bit differently today. Isn't that right, Sid?
Yes, we'll be still talking about science, but today we have a theme that connects all of our stories together. Caves!
Yes, that's right. From lunar lava tubes to troglodytes, we will be exploring the wonderful world of caves.
That's all coming up here on Science at 1.
Yes. So exciting. I was so happy to learn that our theme this week was caves, because I don't know about you, but I am not really familiar with caves.
Yeah, no, I think I've only been to a cave once. I went to the Carlsbad Caverns in New Mexico a couple years ago, but that was about it. I don't really know much about them.
Yeah, no, me too. Like, I did hiking when I was younger. I would do a lot of hiking in Ohio and Hocking Hills. Some beautiful giant caves there. That was really cool.
Yeah, are there any ones that stood out to you, or is it just all of them were very interesting?
There's one that's really famous and popular called Old Man's Cave. Yeah.
Why is it called Old Man's Cave?
That's a great question. I think it was like when I was a kid, I was always told that it was because some old man lived in the cave at one point in time.
Like, was that to scare away kids? Like, oh, the old man's gonna come get you? Or is it just...
Honestly, probably. I truly don't know why they told us an old man lived in that cave, because like it's a huge cave. It's like several 100 meters wide.
Wow.
It's ginormous. I cannot imagine. It's like a mansion, a cave mansion if you're
cave
living
mansion.
in it.
Okay.
Yeah, but no, other than that, I didn't have a lot of experience with caves, and I'm excited to learn more about them with all of you. And before we hop into caves, we're going to start off with some music. Our first song of the day, sticking with our cave theme, is Fallout by Mariana's Trench.
Empty room, I'm empty too. Everything reminds me of you. So many things I shouldn't have missed. The more that I push you, the more you resist. It's easy to say it's for the best when you want more while you leave me with less. I know you're fine, but what do I do? I know you're fine, but what do I do? I'm awake and trying while you're sleeping like a baby beside him. I'm on the ledge while you're so polite and composed. I know you see me and you're making it look so easy. What comes and goes, I go with that. I know you're fine, but what about through the fallout? Well, now there's him and now there's me. The secrets you give and the secrets you keep. And nevertheless, it's never you let. It's more that I give and the less that I get. Don't tell me to fight for you. After this long, I shouldn't have to. I know you're fine, but what do I do? I know you're fine, but what do I do? I'm awake and trying while you're sleeping like a baby beside him. I'm on the ledge while you're so polite and composed. I know you see me and you're making it fine, but what do I do? I know you're fine, but what do I know you're fine, but what about falling through the falling I know you're fine, but what about I'm awake and trying when you're sleeping like a baby beside him on the ledge while you're so polite and you're falling through the falling through the
And that was Fallout by Mariana's Trench.
So, for our first story of the day, I want to talk about caves on the moon. I had heard about craters on the moon before, but I only recently learned about caves on the moon.
So what's the difference between caves and craters on the moon?
Well, so the caves on the moon, the more specific term would be lunar lava tubes. Yeah, so it's a fun name. Basically, these tubes, lunar lava tubes, are caused by billions of years ago. The moon was covered in lava, just a big hot ball of lava, and when the lava was cooling, it cools like on the outside faster than the inside. So it forms kind of a pipe, and then as the lava flows through, you're left with this pipe, and yeah, it's a lava tube. It's a tube that was made by lava. And the difference between a crater specifically is that craters, they're big pits. It's kind of like, rectangles and squares. A lunar lava tube, when it caves in, is going to be a crater, but not all craters are lava tubes. There's lots of space debris flying around that the moon gets hit with, so the impact of that will cause craters. Yeah, but when a lunar lava tube collapses, that's kind of creating a crater from the bottom up.
So how do we know about lunar lava tubes?
Yeah, that's a good question, especially considering the fact that, like, they're tubes underground, they're caves,
Yeah.
so we can't just see them with our naked eye. And they use this really cool technology called synthetic aperture radar, SAR, and this is where they use radar technology to create 2D or 3D images of caves. I had never heard of this before, but it's been tested on caves on Earth before it got used on this one specific pit called the Mare Tranquillitatis Pit. I think this was last year. I think around last July is when the paper came out about it. That, they used this SAR technology and they took a picture of this cave using radar. And based on that image, they deduced that there was a 45-meter opening at the bottom of the pit that they're like, that's a lunar lava tube. That's an opening to a big cave on the moon.
So other than just being this like really cool thing, because I mean, like, it sounds really cool as you're describing it to me, but why is this important? Like, what does this help us do? Or is there any significance to this?
Yeah, I mean, it is just kind of a cool thing to know about, like, there's these tunnels under the moon. We'd kind of thought that there would be tunnels under the moon caused by lava flow for a long time, but we didn't really have evidence until last year. But because now we know about them, that's actually a really good source for research now, is that if we're able to ever send up some sort of rover to go in those caves, then those are kind of pristine rocks that haven't been weathered by the moon. I mean, the moon doesn't really have much of an atmosphere, so the rocks that are on the surface are really prone to getting altered by this harsh environment. But if it's underneath the surface, it hasn't been really altered that much. And then the one crazy suggestion that I kept seeing pop up is that people are proposing that's where we build moon bases at.
What?
Yeah. So what? Moon bases, it's especially with like Elon Musk and this ideas of going to Mars, the idea of people living on the moon, whether that be for research or a colony or whatever, that's been more realistic, or I should say talked about more. And the idea is that if you're in a cave, then there's a lot less infrastructure of having to like build up everything around you.
Gotcha. Yeah, and it's already like kind of cleared away, I guess, in a
Yeah,
sense.
it's you just kind of have to retrofit this cave, and you're already protected from radiation and harsh elements.
Well, that's super interesting. Thank you so much for telling us more about these lunar lava tubes. So back to music now. Here's I'm Waiting for the Man by the Velvet Underground.
I'm waiting for my man. $26 in my hand. Up to Lexington, 125. Feel sick and dirty, more dead than alive. I'm waiting for my man. Hey, white boy, what you doing uptown? Hey, white boy, you chasing all women around. Oh, pardon me, sir, it's furthest from my mind. I'm just looking forward to different in mind. I'm waiting for my man. He comes, he's all dressed in black. He wore shoes and a big straw hat. He's never early, he's always late. First thing you learn is that you always gotta wait. I'm waiting for my man. All working now. Up to a brownstone, up 3 flights of stairs. Everybody's pinned you, but nobody cares. He's got the works, gives you sweet taste. Oh, then you gotta spit because you got no time to waste. I'm waiting for my man. Baby, don't you holler, darling, don't you bawl and shout. I'm feeling good, you know I'm gonna work it on out. I'm feeling good, I feel oh so fine. Into tomorrow, but that's just some other time. I'm waiting for my man. Walk it home. That's all right.
And that was I'm Waiting for the Man by the Velvet Underground.
So we have our first guest of the day on with us. Welcome, Lottie.
Hello.
So, Lottie, I hear that you've been looking at the 3 different types of cave animals. Can you please tell us more about them?
Absolutely. So, yeah, like you say, there are 3 different types of animals that live in caves. So today I thought I would do a little mini introductions to them to you guys. So the first of these are troglodytes. So a fancy word, but basically troglo is cave and xenos is guest. So these are cave guests. So these animals visit caves. This means that they don't actually have any specific cave adaptations, but part of their life cycle is spent in caves. So that could be hibernation or nesting. So these could be bats, bears, and even moths, which is very cool.
Moths.
I suppose also we're sort of cave guests if you like caves.
Yeah.
So I guess cavers could be troglodytes. Because obviously we don't have any cave adaptations.
It's just nice to be in a cave
It's
sometimes.
just, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's also technology for us to be able to go into caves and see in the dark.
Exactly.
So do we? Is it? It has to be natural adaptations.
Yes.
Not okay.
As I'll go on with the other a spoiler, but one of the other types of cave dweller is a troglodyte, which has specific adaptations, which means they actually can't live anywhere else than a cave.
Okay.
But before we get to those cool guys, the troglophiles are the next type, and so that's troglo cave, xenos love. So these guys just love caves, but they can live outside caves. So troglophiles can live in the cave but can leave in search of food, for example.
So something like a cave salamander it would be really unhappy with
Exactly.
maybe there's a bad cave housing market and they're like, dang, I really gotta leave this cave even though I love it here.
Yeah, they're not bound to the cave, but they'll be really sad out of it. So you've got beetles, frogs, and like you say, salamanders are examples of troglophiles. And finally, the most curious type are the troglodytes, and these guys can only live in caves. So they have really cool adaptations for living in caves, a slow metabolism, so they can survive without food for a long time. Because as you can imagine, there's not a lot of food hanging about in a cave, so if they can hang on for a bit, that's a really good adaptation to have. And they also have underdeveloped eyes or absent eyes, because obviously not that needed in the cave.
Yeah, quite dark.
Quite dark. And they also have long antennae, long legs to help them get around. So they're really funky looking things that develop in caves. Lots of them don't have pigmentation because obviously there's not really an advantage of being
Colored in a dark
yeah.
space.
Camouflage is not really needed in that environment, and protection from the sun, obviously, not a big deal.
These are just little creatures that have gangly limbs and no
Yeah.
eyes.
They're
and-
just great.
That's really fun.
So what do these guys eat then? You mentioned that there's they have to hang on in order to survive. So what are they eating?
So troglodytes, they eat plant matter, bacteria, plankton, carcasses, basically bat guano, which is bat poo. So anything they can find, to be honest.
They're little scavengers. That's
they
what
are scavengers, exactly.
Yeah, wow, that's you're describing such a harsh environment that, it doesn't sound like a pleasant place to live. We like to visit caves, but we don't live there necessarily. So how did these animals even evolve in such a harsh environment?
Yeah, good question, because, what would want to be in a cave? But it's thought they were actually surface living animals, and just somehow, this is the scientific research, it's just that we think they somehow ended up in caves. So they got stranded there somehow. It could have been a stream or some water washed them in, and then they couldn't get out, so they were stranded. And then if there were multiple individuals from the same species, they could then reproduce over time to get new troglodyte species. It's even the case that even if they ended up in a different part of the cave and they couldn't get to the other individuals, there's a really high diversity of species, because there's even in the same cave there could be multiple species, which is very cool. There are actually over 7,500 troglodyte species,
Wow.
which is a lot.
That's a ton.
So you've got spiders, beetles, fish, millipedes, isopods, just to name a few. So there's a lot of diversity there.
So do you have your own favorite troglodyte?
I do.
Ooh, of course you do.
Yes, I do. I don't know if I'm saying this right, but I think it's called the Olm. And this one is a very funky looking guy. He's the only vertebrate cave dweller. And they're salamanders, which are really well adapted to cave life. So like I said before, the same sort of features of cave animals, of little pigmentation, highly sensitive to smell and touch, so they can really get around in that quite difficult environment. And the fun fact about the Olm is they were originally thought that they were baby dragons.
Oh, wow.
Which is really cool. So the first record of the Olm is in Slovenia, and it was heavy rain, and all these little, salamanders were washed out of the cave. And everyone was like, "What is this?" And they look sort of like eel axolotl-esque with pink gills and translucent skin. Beautiful. And everyone thought they were, the offspring of cave dragons. And it's shrouded in myth, and for a long time, the Olm was responsible for a lot of dragon folklore in Slovenia. So, very cool guy. They're just really funky guys, and they can live for up to 100 years. They can go without eating for several years. And I just think they're epic.
Yep.
So that's my favourite cave dweller.
These guys, I pulled up a picture while you're talking about it, and if you've never seen an Olm before, really look it up. It's like someone took it's like someone took a axolotl and put it through some sort of press. It's like a flat, weird looking axolotl.
They got kind of a flat nozzle kind of thing. Yeah,
they're super cute though.
They're really cute.
Unfortunately, I have to ask, because we love this animal, we've learned to love it, and so we have to know: is it endangered?
Sadly, yes. So the Olm is on the IUCN threatened list, and there's many different reasons why troglodytes are at risk. And threatened, mainly due to humans, sadly. Polluted water, 'cause obviously they're so reliant on life outside the cave that any water that comes in and that's polluted, they can take that up into their system, and that's going to be really bad for them. Mining and things like that is obviously really bad for cave dwellers. There's a case in Australia, I think, where they found brand new troglodyte species, and it's where they wanted to do some mining, and it paused the development for a while, but then eventually the big mining corporation obviously won, and it was overturned, and then these troglodyte species have been lost. So there is a chance, because of the high diversity of troglodytes, that they could go extinct due to human activity before we know about their existence.
That's awful.
Which
How
is
could
so
that happen?
sad.
These freaky little guys are so cool. I can't believe that they're just so easily wiped out. That's awful.
It's very sad. But let's hope for the Olm that that's not going to happen. So I'm hopeful.
We have to stay positive.
Yeah, I'm
stay
hopeful for
positive.
the Olm.
And hopefully our listeners at home will now they know about the Olm, and they know, and they can spread the word, and hopefully
exactly
Save the Olm.
save the Olm.
Hashtag save the Olm.
Well, thank you so much, Lottie, for telling us about these curious creatures.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, of course. We're gonna move on to our next song, which is Flashlight by Giant Rooks.
Where do I start? Where do I begin? I try to let it all sink in before it slips away like a dream. Summer passed and autumn came. The world outside was turning grey. Most people learn what they see. Swimming with sharks, they circle all around me, sniffing my blood. I'm patrolling every corner of my mind. My eyes pointing aside, just like flashlights, searching every corner of my mind. Memories collide with grim flashlights, searching every corner of my mind. The more I think, the less I seem to know. This is where I wanna go. Don't take it away from culture wars. Some have found a bigger cause. I don't care about what they say. Search for answers on the internet. Happiness slips through my hand. I might go and find some peace of mind, but nothing's ever gonna change. God won't help me win this game. I don't care about what they say. I don't care about it today. My eyes find inside, just like flashlights, searching every corner of my mind. Memories go live, flickering flashlights, searching every corner of my mind.
And that was Flashlight by Giant Rooks. Now, Sydney, you found an interesting article about bacteria, right?
Yeah, so I was just perusing, I think I was looking at The Scientist online, and I found this really interesting article about bacteria. So we've been hearing a lot about antibiotic resistance and how it's on the rise to more superbug spreading. But Lizzie, do you know why we're seeing more bacteria with antibiotic resistance?
I mean, I would assume that it's because we're overusing antibiotics, just from, what I learned in undergrad about, the use of antibiotics.
Yeah, so that might be contributing to the current reason, but it's kind of debated amongst scientists where antibiotics resistance really came from. So some say that it's through this overuse of antibiotics in clinical and agricultural settings that's leading to the bacteria adapting and finding ways to survive. But some others believe that bacteria may have already had this resistance way before humans started manufacturing antibiotics.
Oh, really? That's interesting. How long ago are we talking?
Well, one research group led by Dr. Hazel Barron at the University of Alabama has found that antibiotic resistance may be more of a natural and ancient phenomenon, potentially up to millions of years ago. And they've done this by studying populations of bacteria. But can you guess where these populations are found?
I guess, considering this is Cave Week, I'm gonna guess that these bacteria were found in caves?
Yes, in caves. So more specifically, they looked at this one cave located in New Mexico. I think it's pronounced Lechugia Cave, which is in the Carlsbad Caverns. It's one of the longest caves in the world, and because of how it was formed, it's been isolated from Earth's surface for more than, I think, roughly 4 million years is what I was reading.
Okay.
Meaning that the bacteria there, they haven't been influenced by human activity at all because they're so far down and so deep and far removed from us. And so they could be studied to understand the evolutionary phenomenon of how these bacteria acquired this resistance.
It's dang. So, they cracked open this cavern and it was, unleashing this horror of antibiotic-resistant bacteria. Is that right? Is that what they found?
No. So it was more that they just they went into the cave and took a sample from way in the depths because the researchers there are big cavers, so they really love going to caves. So they took a sample, started running some tests by testing them against different antibiotics. So they end up finding 93 strains of bacteria, and of those 93, the majority of them had resistance to at least 14 commercially used antibiotics.
Whoa.
Right now. And most of those are the ones that are naturally derived in the environment. But many also had resistance to multiple antibiotics. It wasn't just one. They'd be resistance to a whole slew of them. That's
a lot. It's not just they're resistant to penicillin and that's it. It's a bunch of stuff. That's crazy.
Yeah. No. So it is really, really fascinating. But this will hopefully help researchers better understand how bacteria have long ago adapted to be resistant to antibiotics and to consider alternative ways to treat bacterial infections.
That is really interesting. Thanks for talking about this cool cave bacteria, Sid.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, so we're going to get back into the music. Here is So Hot You're Hurting My Feelings by Caroline Polachek.
That was So Hot You're Hurting My Feelings by Caroline Polachek. While we're at the midway point of our show, we want to remind you to please get in touch with us.
You can email us via science19@gmail.com. That's 9 written as a number. So that's science, SCIENCEONE, number 9@gmail.com.
Along with that email, please send us a chat in our live stream. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, so far in our chat, thanks to Georgia Christie saying that she loves this song. We're glad you like it. We also want to shout out George Stevens talking about using the moon caves to store America's surplus cheese. That's a great idea. I think cheese on the moon, famously made out of cheese.
Yeah.
It's a great idea.
Very inventive. So later on in the hour, we'll be talking about the news, cavemen, and even more cave creatures. So stick around. For our next song, here's Deviltown by Cavetown.
Life's alright in Deviltown. We're right, no one's gonna catch us now. Dad has bought a new car now. We're fine, no one's gonna catch us now. Okay.
Another 1,000 times, hold my hand tight. We'll make it another night. I still get a little scared of something new, but I feel a little safer when I'm with you. Falling doesn't feel so bad when I know you're falling this way too. Deviltown is colder in the summertime. I'll lose my mind at least another 1,000 times. Hold my hand tight, we'll make it another night. I still get a little scared of something new, but I feel a little safer when I'm with you. Falling doesn't feel so bad when I know you're falling this way too.
That was Deviltown by Cavetown. Here to talk with us today about the news is Georgia. Welcome, Georgia.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
So, can you tell us about what are your stories?
Yes, absolutely. There was so much science news going on today. So I've tried to pick out a few stories that will be interesting for our listeners and tell us a bit about some various goings on. So the first one is about a topic that's pretty near and dear to everyone's stomachs these days: microplastics.
Oh, it's so yummy.
Delicious. I eat microplastics all the time.
Yeah, one way or another, they always seem to be in my diet. But a recent study was looking at how microplastics impact mice. And how they did this was they tracked the way that plastic moved through the mice's bodies after they consumed it. Now, as I was looking into this story, I realized I wasn't totally clear on what a microplastic exactly is. So you guys have heard of microplastics?
Yeah, I've heard of them before.
Yeah, I've heard of them that were like chock full of them. I don't know. They're
Yeah,
tiny particles of
exactly,
plastic, right?
So, as you might imagine from the name, microplastics are small plastics, but actually they're specifically microplastics if they're 5 millimeters or less in length. And then if they're much smaller than that, they can even be nanoplastics, and that's a whole other thing. But as you may have heard through the grapevine, studies have found microplastics basically entirely throughout the human body, in our brains, in our livers, in our kidneys, and they're also found kind of throughout nature. So you hear a lot about microplastics in the ocean, but they're also sometimes floating around in the air. They can be in deep sea ice. They found it in Antarctica.
Oh my gosh.
And
That's crazy.
It's crazy. They're everywhere, and we don't really know how they interact with our bodies. So it's kind of one of those things that is becoming a huge field of study.
So you said that in this study, they started looking about the impact of microplastics on mice, right?
Yeah, so this was a study out of Beijing, and the researchers had these mice that they were experimenting with, and they gave them water that was laced with microplastics that were fluorescent. And these were the same types of microplastics that we tend to see in household appliances and packaging. So the same ones that humans are likely to be coming in contact with. And as the microplastics were consumed, the mice's immune cells engulfed them to try and like neutralize the threat. And so their cells became fluorescent, and the researchers could then watch how these fluorescent cells moved through the mice's bodies and how it impacted them.
So what did it actually do to the bodies? Like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, like I'm like so
Yeah,
on my edge of my seat.
Edge of your seat, right? So they kind of behaved like blood clots similarly, but just more spontaneous blood clots than one would typically see. So when they reached the brain, they actually reduced the blood flow to the brain, and also thereby kind of reduced the mice's mobility. And so obviously we don't know if this is exactly how the microplastics would behave in humans. We are quite different from mice in some ways, but it will be interesting to see how this research kind of leads into future research and kind of helps us understand how microplastics interact in the body in general.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just not looking good in general if the mice are already getting blood clots.
Yeah,
you can
right?
only imagine.
Just from some
Yeah,
microplastic
no.
soup.
I mean, plastic sucks. So, yeah. Well, that was a little bit of a scary story. Do you have anything else in science news for us today?
I do have something else. I'm not sure if this is necessarily less scary, but you guys can let me know. So it's recent research that's come out about how cancer cells weaponize their mitochondria to fight the body's immune responses.
Weaponize. That's quite a word choice.
Yeah, I might.
The powerhouse of the cell is now the weapon of cancer. What?
Yeah, right. I was quite surprised. So in my mind, the mitochondria had kind of always more or less been within one cell. Like the cell owned its own mitochondria. Yeah. But as it turns out, they can actually be stolen or transferred between cells. And so this has been seen in some cancer cells before. But this research article found that in a handful of cancer patients, researchers found that the mitochondria found in immune cells that are supposed to be fighting the cancerous infections instead actually matched the deformed mitochondria that we see in the cancer cells themselves. So they believe that the cancer cells were kind of like letting their mitochondria loose, more or less. And as the immune cells engulfed the mitochondria to try and rid the body of the infection, the mitochondria were actually able to take over the energy production of the immune cells, and therefore kind of were able to reduce their ability to have energy and be able to survive, and led to a lot more self-destruction of immune cells and just overall reduced immune response.
So it kind of sounds like it's like a Trojan horse in a way. They
Yeah,
throw out the
kind of.
mitochondria and they're like, haha, we got you. So what does this mean, though, in terms of like treating cancer?
Right. So, I mean, this study was really limited. I think they only had like a handful of patients, but it does suggest that we might need to look into mitochondria in cancer in general, and specifically how mitochondrial DNA can play a role in ongoing cancer research. Because if this is as big a part of some certain cancerous illnesses, then knowing how the mitochondrial DNA plays in addition to the cellular DNA would be pretty important to understand immune suppression in cancer illnesses.
Yeah, I think, at the end of this story, this feels more hopeful that, like, it sucks that mitochondria are kind of being taken over and swapped around, but it seems like there's something we can do about it, That's more positive to me than just evil microplastics.
Yeah, I think so. Now, I have one last story, and it's about ice and seals.
Ooh.
But it's also not that happy, but I'll try and give the cliff notes.
Georgia, come on. Come on.
It was just wasn't a great happy news day. So there's this big iceberg that has broken off of Antarctica. And actually, it broke off of mainland Antarctica in the 80s, but has kind of been spinning around in an ocean vortex since then. But it broke out of its vortex in December, and since then has been moving northern pretty quickly.
That doesn't sound good.
No, right? Right? Just a big iceberg speeding towards you. And when I say big, I mean like big. It's 3,500 square kilometers in area and 400 meters tall. So for any of our English listeners on the show, that's about the size of the county of Cornwall and taller than the Shard, like that big building in London. So huge. And it's currently heading towards South Georgia, which is a wildlife refuge island in the South Atlantic Ocean.
No.
I know.
It's coming for you.
Yes,
Quite literally.
I know, right? And here's where the seals come into it. So seals and penguins live on this island and on the surrounding islands. And in the past, when icebergs have collided with the island, it's blocked them from being able to get to their feeding grounds. And so it could be quite bad, but we're hoping for the best, and we're hoping that also this particular iceberg, which, by the way, is called A23A, we're hoping that we can learn a lot from this iceberg's transit, and that can help prepare us for the probably inevitable future iceberg collisions that might be coming our way thanks to climate change.
Yet another natural disaster to think about. Can't wait.
Yeah. So sorry for all the bad news today, guys, but I hope you've learned a bit.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on and telling us about the news, even if it wasn't always the happiest sometimes. Up next, we're going to be heading back to music. We're going to be playing Underground by Jack White.
And that was Underground by Jack White. For our next guest today, we have Maddie here to talk about arguably what first comes to mind when you think about caves. Cavemen!
Thank you for having me.
So, Maddie, I feel like everyone has sort of an idea of what a caveman is, but how exactly have cavemen become such a staple image in our everyday jargon when we're talking about caves? Like, is there any science behind that depiction?
So, cavemen are quite interesting because they're kind of a product of scientific progress, but also simultaneously like this product of the media and like their commentary on prehistoric and modern life.
So that's really interesting. Can you tell us a little bit more about how it all started?
Yeah, so essentially it kind of begins with the Age of Enlightenment, which is this period of massive intellectual progress within Europe throughout the 17th and 18th centuries. And there was a lot of controversy towards scientific innovation with regards to religion, and people just being very kind of scared of the future and what they were finding. So there was a lot of negative reactions, particularly within England, and this culminated for many decades until the early 1900s, when essentially they were finding, human fossils from the Stone Age. And this Stone Age is essentially 6,000 plus years ago. And this is when we started to see it kind of depicted in media. So we started seeing, what we think of shaggy furs, grunting noises, clubs, spears, what you see when you think of a cartoon, and many times. And this was actually because of this British author, Edward Tennyson Reed. He created this thing called Prehistoric Peeps, which is essentially a political cartoon, but it's become like the modern image for what we see normally when we talk about it.
Okay, so that's really cool to think about, like, how this image of like a caveman, Neanderthal type of character came about. So, like, in terms of scientific accuracy, though, were these depictions of cavemen set in environments that actually educated people about the Stone Age?
They educated them in the sense of introducing, like, obviously the time period of their existence is accurate, but at the same time they were depicting them alongside dinosaurs and other creatures that weren't necessarily accurate. And for instance, one of the big things we can think about is the Flintstones. I feel like everyone knows what that is.
Yeah, definitely.
One of the most iconic cartoons in history. And they were essentially set up as being this like modern satire. So essentially trying to take the 1960s and comment on like what they think the ideal suburban life in the United States would be, but didn't want to necessarily actually do that in real time. So they're like, let's do the Stone Age because no one knows enough about it. So that doesn't necessarily have much accuracy because it delves from actual accurate Stone Age life, but it also kind of set a lot of what we know with science fiction in the way that works as a commentary on everyone's, day-to-day life. If you read a lot of or consume a lot of science fiction, you know that it's not always that accurate, but it has a really good hope behind it. It just, maybe they could add a little bit more science here and there.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, thank you so much, Maddie. That sounds super fun. That was really great.
Yeah, that was fun to hear about. I never really thought about the Flintstones as being super accurate. In this case,
they're jumping with dinosaurs.
They're sliding on the backs of dinosaurs, but yeah, that's really cool to hear about. And so for our last little bit of the show, we're going to transition here, and we are going to do a cave creatures game. We're going to bring in Georgia, and she's going to play with the three of us that are already sitting here.
Hey, everybody.
Oh my gosh,
Happy
welcome
to be
back.
Thank you for having me once again. So yes, I have, now that we've learned so much about caves and we've learned a little bit about cave animals even today, I have concocted a bit of a game. And so how this game will work is I'm going to give you the common name of an animal, not the Latin, the common name, and a few facts about them. And then you guys can ask one question as a group. One individual person can ask a question, but I can't guarantee I'll have the answers because I've only read a little bit about each of them. And so that could give you a hint that I made it up or not, because some of these animals are real and some of them are not. And your goal is to figure out which are which.
This sounds like a lot of fun. I'm
Yeah.
excited.
I think it's going to be
It's gonna be
good.
very competitive.
Yes, yeah. And so let's dive into our first one with a bird called the swiftlet. So this is a small cave-dwelling bird that lays nests just inside the mouths of caves. However, they often leave the cave to get food and etc. And what's super cool about them is they use echolocation so that they can fly in complete darkness when they're in the caves. And they're found throughout the southern Pacific, in southern Asia and northeastern Australia. Now, that is the
Yeah.
swiftlet. What do you think?
The name made me think of Taylor Swift, which is why I'm like not 100% sure, but the description is like really good. So
I am an ecologist.
I know that is true.
I feel like I'm kind of a bird person, so
I mean,
I feel-
Swift is like somewhat common-ish.
yeah,
terminology, too.
there definitely are swifts. There are chimney swifts that live in chimneys. It's like a similar environment, I think. So I'm gonna say yes. I think these are a real animal.
I think I'll say yes. Yeah.
I think I'll just like be controversial and say no because I know nothing about birds, so why not?
Okay, interesting. So we have 2 yeses and a no, and the correct answer is real. Swiftlets are an actual bird that are found in the southeastern hemisphere. Now, this next one is a fun one. It is called the catacomb shark. So these are relatives of the dogfish shark, which means they're relatively small. They're not like a big great white, but they are found along the east coast of Mexico in underwater caves and sometimes in flooded catacombs, which is how they got their name. They were first maybe seen by people who were scuba diving around in flooded catacombs, and they kind of lie in wait for their prey. And they have vestigial eyes, so they used to have eyes because they're descended from dogfish, but they're blind because they live in caves and they never really see light, so they're extremely sensitive to lights. And so sometimes we see when people bring big lights in to scuba dive, it can be bad for them and the ecosystem.
Yeah, okay. I feel like I don't know much about ichthyology, so this is a harder one for me to figure out.
The question is she doing 2 real ones back to back or a real and a fake one? That's also part of the strategy.
Yeah. I will go ahead and say that one's real because I said I got it wrong last time. So why not?
False. I feel like that gave me like Finding Nemo vibes. You know, the scene
Yeah.
with like the
Oh yeah, where they go underground or like in
Yeah.
the really dark
that
part
gives
of
me
the
that
ocean.
kind of vibes.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that this one is fake, just because I know in my past I knew a lot of shark kids and they never brought up the shark. So,
Shark kids.
yeah, they really like sharks.
Okay, well, the correct answer is false. I was inspired by
yeah.
one of my favorite films, 47 Meters Down, Uncaged.
Interesting.
And that's where I came up with this creature. So thank you guys so much for playing. I hope you enjoyed.
That was fun.
Yeah.
Guess the creature.
Glad I lost for both rounds, so it's great. But
I get bragging rights.
yeah. But that's going to conclude our episode for today. So thank you so much, everybody, for listening. And we hope that you'll be able to tune in next time.
Yeah, this has been great. Next week, we're going to be talking about time. So come join and talk about time. My name is Lizzie,
My name is Sydney.
and thank you so much for joining Science at 1.